should be played at high volume. This should be played at high volume. This should be played at high volume. Preferably in a residential area.
The following thoughts on Happy Hour do not represent Cox Media Group or its sponsoring. Anything you hear may and will be used against you. Thank you. Voted as best local podcast in Tampa Bay by the Creative Loafing. You're listening to Happy Hour.
What up? What's happening? This is Happy Hour. I am your host, Ryan Hoppy, and I'm pretty pumped about this next guest on the phone line. You can hear him every morning in San Francisco as the host of Kevin Klein Live on Live 105. The host, Kevin Klein, is on Happy Hour. What's up, dude?
I'm a huge fan of yours from Game of Thrones. You're an amazing Hodor.
Everybody has been saying that to me. I can't even watch one episode, Kevin. I watched about the first 5, and with my ADHD, I just couldn't do it. There's way too much going on, man.
I don't think anyone who says they like that show has any idea what's going on, but you feel the need to watch it anyway, and so you can, throw a jab at some coworker instead of the boring, typical weather conversation in the elevator. And then people get confused, and they go their own way, and then they hope that Khaleesi gets naked so they can pleasure themselves to HBO, which is why God intended HBO.
Speaking of co-workers, you've talked on air about how when the show first began on Live 105 that you guys were low rated, and now you guys keep on climbing up in the ratings at Live 105. How has everything been going via the vibe of the building?
No one in the building likes me, so I don't really know. That's not really a good indication. I felt horrible for the sales department. As you know, radio is it's a business, right? Everyone wants to pretend it's a good excuse to hang out with rock stars and give out oversized, crappy T-shirts at gas stations. But it's all about making money, and I don't know how that station was able to keep their lights on for years. They pretty much since the days of Howard Stern had not had a successful show in the morning there that has been consistent and been able to build an audience, and they've been through a ton. And I was really, I had a good gig in L.A. I was doing a TV show, working at Playboy. It was kind of the dream job that I could have created for myself. And regardless, I felt this like weird urge to try to take on a project that I knew was pretty much a guaranteed fail from the beginning. And they promised a ton of support, and they said, "Oh, yeah, it's going to be a marketing, and there's going to be an intensive." That was the quote. That was the funniest quote. Intensive marketing campaign. And here we are, almost 2 years later. No marketing, no support, no budget, and we were somehow able to build an audience now to, every week it's getting better and better, and now we're number one in a bunch of the demos, which they haven't seen. I didn't realize how long it had been, but someone had been working there for 7 years. They said we've never seen a number one next to anything in the morning at Live 105 for years. So,
was there a point though where you were maybe wondering why you left Playboy for this gig, or did you know in your heart, working with a team like Dead Eyes, Useless Weirdo, and Ellie, that you would figure out a way to make it work?
Some team, yeah. That's a team I threw together, and I actually, it's funny. I put together a team of people that I'd never worked with before, but also a team of people that had never done radio before. And my plan was to, was to find people that hadn't been kind of spoiled or ruined by, in my opinion, what kind of a lot of radio is these days, which is just people, reading TMZ and talking about who Taylor Swift is dating and just a bunch of topics that I just refuse to even talk about on our show. So, I still think about it every day. I had a cushy gig at my gig at Playboy by the time I was done there. And I that started as a radio show on Sirius XM, and it had built up over the years. But by the time I left there, I was working 4 days a week, 1 hour a day, 8 weeks off a year. I was making good money. I was around naked playmates every single day of the week. And it was like a pretty easy job, and I guess I kind of missed the challenge part of radio. And as you know, you're a radio guy. I mean, you're probably one of the last remaining diehard fans of radio, what it is. You're a fan of everyone who's on it. You're a fan of doing it, and as a young goon, there's not a lot of people like you that that's the big thing. Radio's losing all these young people because they don't even care anymore. They got so many options.
What do you think about the future of radio? Does it look very dim, or do you think there's a chance with mobile apps that it could rejuvenate itself?
Well, radio is radio is such a screwed up industry. Like I look at episodes of Vinyl now, and I think to myself, man, like in the early days of radio, you were on the air. You were pretty much not only were you paid good money, but you were also given tons of blow and hookers, and everything was part of payola. And it was just a great gig. It was fun. And then obviously corporations took over. I work for a big corporation, CBS. I'm not sure who owns your station, but it's in some ways that's part of a giant business, right? You can't have people doing blow and running around naked in a building anymore for whatever reason. I don't know who started that rule, but I think radio is not doomed, because I think it's going to come down to content. I think if you're doing something different, if you're doing something compelling, it'll work. If it doesn't work on FM radio, it'll work on satellite. If it doesn't work on satellite, it'll work on a podcast. In general, I think content will always win. That's what people say. But I do believe that there's a lot of people that are still on the air in a lot of markets that are all they're trying to do is keep their job, so that they're kind of they're coming out of a place of fear. They're scared of losing their jobs. So they don't want to ruffle any feathers. They don't want to do anything that's a little controversial. They don't want to get complaints. They don't want to get complaint letters. They just want to keep their paycheck coming in. And I think that doing anything out of fear is the worst way to do anything. Now,
I listen to a lot of radio, and it's becoming very bland, and all the shows sound the same. And your show and shows on 102.5 The Bone seem to be one of the last shows that are edgy and original on the radio. Is there any point, though, where the PDs maybe are afraid of that, since it's not cookie cutter,
Yeah, look, we used to have meetings with lawyers pretty regularly. I think the lawyer actually either died or he retired. He was very old, and they would always say, because there's like 4 or 5 different shows that are broadcast out of the building that I'm in, and they would always say, like, be more like the other shows. And so I was like, which I hate. No one wants to hear that, because the whole idea of radio is be different, be yourself. And if you're any good, or if you're at least interesting a little bit, people will find you. And if you're not, then you probably shouldn't be doing radio, or maybe you just got to do it in a different city. But I would listen to the other shows, and to me, every other show was doing the exact same thing. They were all talking about the same 5 stories every day. It was Kardashian Roundup, Survivor Roundup, Big Brother Roundup, Dancing with the Stars Roundup. And since that's what everyone's doing on TV, and that's what everyone's doing on the internet, like, I just felt like it was saturated. So I was like, I'd rather just create our own content, create our own events, and if it's interesting even a little bit, like I felt like in a way, even though people are making a big deal about the fact that we've been able to build up the ratings, I feel like people have been so starved. It's like, if you're stuck in the desert for 5-10 years with nothing to drink, even like a warm can of Mountain Dew Code Red is going to look pretty good,
Now, since you are out of San Francisco and marijuana is legal in California, would you say that smoking a little pot helps you come up with ideas for the show?
Yeah, that goes both ways, unfortunately, because I've definitely had ideas that have come to me when I've been medicated. I guess that's the appropriate way to say it now.
Yeah.
But I think my official diagnosis was menstrual cramps, because I checked the wrong box on my form. So I don't even think that's. But sometimes the ideas come to you that way, and you think to yourself, this is going to be a home run. And then when you finally think about it again when you're sober, it's not really a good idea at all. Other times, I think that I wish I could think of a specific, but there's definitely stuff that came to me. I think I want to say I was high, and I was walking. I was walking by a massage parlor. There's like a bunch of massage parlors around the Chinatown area, specifically. Not that any sort of specific ethnicity is responsible for more of the erotic massage parlors. It just happened to be geographically a coincidence. And I think that's when I had, one of the ideas of sending one of our guys in, with his phone in his pocket to see, what kind of deal he could best negotiate in this segment we were doing called Happily Ending After. And I think that came to me, I believe, when I was high, and I thought it was really funny. I was laughing about thinking about it, and then when we did it, I found that to be equally as funny. But a lot of times I'll think of something and then I'll bring it back and I'll be like, this is a horrible idea. I should have never thought of this.
Which bit have you guys had that maybe you came up with 5 minutes before, or you came up with prior to the show, that you didn't think was going to work, and once it went on, it was just gold?
Well, like the first time we did Eating with the Hungry, there's like a huge homeless problem in this city. And the first time we did that, San Francisco was also like a real foodie town. And, every time like someone comes up with a new flavor of Oreo or a new Pop-Tart, like, for the most part, what you get is you get radio shows that will open up the Pop-Tart and everyone on the air will eat it and they'll be like, "No, it's so good, it tastes like s'mores." And then the fat traffic chick will be like, "It does taste like s'mores," and then they'll move along. And we were coming into work with something. They wanted us to taste, I forget what it was, some new flavor of potato chips. And there was a homeless guy sleeping in a box right as I was pulling my car into the studio, and I was like thinking to myself, it'd be so much more interesting if he tried it, and he probably wants it more. So we were going on the air, and we had something, and we were going to eat it. And I was like, let's bring it out to this guy, let him review it for us. And then that was, I believe that was the first time that we did Eating with the Hungry, and now people will send us, every week we get boxes of food, whether it's like a new flavor of the Ritz or a new, new flavor of like cereal, something that comes out that's like a little out there. People send it to us, and we'll usually bring it out and let the homeless community review it. And we had some homeless people come in and judge our Christmas cookies this year. So we developed a nice. We've also had a couple incidents where they've tried to beat us up, and take. Yeah, so it's either way, it's incredibly entertaining.
The vibe that I get from your audience is that they are very loyal and that they come up or that they help you guys with the show. Am I right about that?
Yeah. They're. It's a weird. I'll tell you. I've done radio, New York. I've done radio, DC. Done radio in LA and national stuff. But the Bay Area is very interesting because, and a lot of comedians will say this too. They're very smart. Obviously a lot of people work in tech up here. They get jokes. You don't have to dumb it down. I think a lot of times, the radio will try to go for the lowest common denominator. They'll try to go for the obvious joke, the easiest joke, and as a result, I think they play to the dumber part of the audience, and I try to not do that. And as a result, I definitely think there's some things that maybe don't work, or maybe it's been harder to get to work. But yeah, our audience is pretty smart, man. There's not a day that goes by I don't get a handful of texts or tweets that come in from the audience that make me they genuinely laugh. And we'll share those on the air. I mean, we try to be really interactive. I think a lot of shows talk at people. I don't think a lot of shows talk to people or with people. We try to do that as well. I think the audience picks up on that, and it's cool because they get it. And a lot of times that I'll be mad. If a caller texts in something or says something some guy called in yesterday. He goes, because my wife's pregnant with our first kid. And he says, "Aren't you concerned?" Because I'm a really hairy guy. He's like, "Aren't you concerned if you take your daughter to the zoo that someone's going to shoot you now?" And I was pissed. I didn't think of that. I was like, "That's hilarious. I wish I had thought of that." And yes, I am concerned about that as well. So
now you're a guy on air where you make fun of yourself and you're able to joke about your looks. Did that come with time, or were you a guy where you were trying to overcompensate at first and come off like that hard ass shock jock?
It's really hard to my theory in life is that everyone's dealt certain cards, right? Some people are dealt they're born with a full house. They're just attractive, good looking, the right height. You're a tall guy, you had that going for you. Your face is a little funny looking, but
yes.
What can you do about that? And I felt like I was dealt, and then I feel like you can play your cards. You can play your cards a little. Sometimes you can trade them in. You can get something better. All of a sudden, you can be on a flush draw or a straight draw. Sometimes that happens. Sometimes surgery, working out, gym, whatever. I feel like I was dealt I feel like in life I was just in general with my genes, my hairy, kind of skinny, awkward face, big giant nostrils. I felt like I was kind of dealt like a high 7 was my best hand, and I feel like I played it a little better. I try to I don't work out like I probably should, but I get haircuts regularly. I try to shave once in a while. So I feel like I've now I've traded it in. I'm now dealing with a medium pair. I feel like I've got a pair of 8s or something like that I'm playing with, which is not the best thing in the world. I can't bluff that. I can't bluff a pair of 8s to pretend like I'm some Casanova. I think it's pretty clear what I am. But at the same time, it's interesting because when I meet people, we always talk about people that have resting bitch face, and someone commented on a picture from our Instagram that I look like I have resting monster face, and then that took off a whole life of its own. People start writing songs about it, and now people will, when they meet me, they expect far worse, So it's actually worked to my advantage because when I'll be out, this weekend I was up at some music festival in Napa, Bottle Rock, and a lot of people came up to me and they would say things like, "Oh, you really don't have resting monster face. you know, if you set them up to be disappointed, right, they're already going to be a little bit more impressed when they see you. So that's what I would recommend.
Now, even though you may not be the best-looking guy, how well did you do when you were working for Playboy? Were girls just, like, throwing themselves onto you or what?
Oh, man. That was like – when I took that job, I was 25, and I was single, I think is when I first took that job. And it was like a really fun – it was like the funnest job that I didn't have any fun while I was doing because I was so stressed out the whole time about actually doing the job right. And I also was freaked out about, like I was put in a lot of situations there that were my dream situation. But then I knew if I took advantage of those situations, I probably wouldn't have that job and then would never be invited back to those situations. And when I started doing that show, I was with a co-host, who's a comedian from L.A., and I feel like he was much better at taking advantage of those opportunities. And as a result, like when they had to make some moves and move stuff around, like he was the guy that they didn't want to keep on the show, and I was the guy they kept on the show. And then so I don't like regret that I probably didn't. And I know this is like sounds like a long-winded way of saying that I got rejected and didn't get it. I mean, I definitely had some good times. There were some experiences that I probably never would have had and will never have again. But you know, like within probably a year of working there, I started dating someone, and that woman became my wife, and that job's a lot less fun when you have a wife. So
isn't it weird when you have a girl in your life and then that's when the girls begin talking to you? Like I had a girlfriend for just 7 or 8 weeks, but that's when all the girls would then talk to me at events. But then when I dumped my ex, that's when girls are not talking to me now. Isn't it weird how it works that way?
Why'd you dump her?
Oh, my God. She was the absolute worst. Just many, many reasons. The first thing was she couldn't take a joke. Like when I would make a joke about her on the podcast or when Mike Calta would talk about her, she would get very uptight. And the other problem, Kevin, was I met the parents way too soon because I met her on the app called Tinder. And then the thing was I talked about her on the Mike Calta show from the beginning. So it was just going to be doomed. You know what I mean?
I don't think you have to say the app called Tinder. I think people know what Tinder is these days.
Yeah, but you know what I mean?
That's tough. You got it. You listen. You want to be good on the radio. You know, to a certain extent, you've got to put your life out there, and people need to know that going in. And I've gotten into heated fights with my wife because stuff that has happened in our lives that either I want to talk about on the air, that she doesn't want me to, and then I say, well, I have to talk about it because there's no way for me. And that was one of the hardest things to keep in. You know, there's a balance, I guess. I guess if you have to either pick, like, do you want to be really good on the radio? Do you want to be good in a relationship? Maybe there's a balance there. I haven't probably figured that out yet because we still get into fights. I mean, she freaks out like a lot of women do, and she finds spiders. We find a lot of spiders here, and the last time she was freaking out and having like a panic attack, and I started recording her without her permission, which I guess is illegal, and then she was not happy that I played that on the air. And as a result, you know, I'll put it on the radio. People will call in. They'll say, your wife sounds like an idiot. And she's got to hear that criticism. And she didn't sign on for any of that. Like, you know, I was doing radio long before I knew her. And so, I try the one thing I guess I'm trying to do now more than I've ever done before is try to at least be a little bit understanding of that. I'm not saying that I necessarily alter what I would do, but I at least try to say, all right, well, I understand where you're coming from, but you crying about a spider is hilarious. So I'm sorry I have to share that with the audience. And I'm hoping that eventually she'll come around on that. But yeah, it sounds like with your girl, she didn't want any of the fame. She just wanted to be with Ryan the man.
Well, isn't it weird how the girls that want all the fame are the ones to watch out for, and then the ones that don't want the fame tend to be the ones that are the girls that would be better to be with, but then again, it's not going to work out, you know, in the long run.
Yeah, well, you're a big time. I mean, aren't you podcaster of the year in Tampa?
I tried, man. I did get it, and now I'm trying to win a second time in a row, so everything's going good for me.
Before? Ever happened in the history of Tampa podcasting?
They have the show every year. It's by the Creative Loafing of Tampa Bay, and they do a Best of the Bay contest. Like last year, Mike Kelta won Best Morning Show. We won 102.5 The Bone, Best Radio. So it was an honor to win Best Local Podcast. And what I see from Tampa Bay that I see from the Bay for you guys is that the radio audiences are really loyal and they love good content. Isn't that refreshing when the audiences actually really dig it, you know?
Yeah. Do you want people to like what you're doing? Of course. I don't think the audience necessarily, no matter where you are, should ever dictate what it is you're going to do. I think eventually you've got to decide what you think is funny, and you got to go with it, or you got to do what you think is interesting, and there'll either be an audience for it or there won't be. I share a mutual friend with Mike. Bert Kreischer is a buddy of mine, and obviously, I know he's down there with you guys a lot, and Bert's a guy that I've vibed with from the very beginning, and he gets radio, and he's a pretty good guy. But he also, I feel like he's different than a lot of comedians, in the sense that I feel like he'll go ramble on about a story if he thinks it's funny, even if it's about him and on a train with Russian mobsters, even if it's not like a traditional set up punchline joke, and I respect that about him. And dude, of course you want the audience to like it. There's nothing worse than everyone in radio has, in some capacity, has low self-esteem, is looking for their own sort of acceptance or praise, right? So if you're doing something and the audience says you suck or go F yourself, and we get plenty of that. I mean, today we read a 1-star Yelp review about our show on the air where a guy said we made him cry and he feared for the future or something like that. But that hurts. I mean, it's kind of hilarious too, but it hurts. You want people to like you, but then again, it's more important that you do something that you think is different,
What is the key to having to deal with the ratings each and every week? Because I won Best Local Podcast, and that felt good. But I haven't had that thing yet where 1 week you're number one, and then the next week you're in 9th place. How do you guys fight adversity? What's it like when you guys go up and down in the ratings? I've always wanted to know that from a radio perspective.
Did you find out we're in 9th place next week?
Oh, no, I'm just guessing. I'm just saying I know their radio shows go up and down all the time. What's that like?
It's weird. When I was at Satellite Radio, we never got ratings, and I missed it. I missed it. I was like, I remember starting out in radio, I'd get ratings, and at the time I was in, upstate New York, and I would get ratings. I think 3 times a year, maybe twice a year. But I would I'd count down the days, and then they would come, and if they were great, you feel great, and if they sucked, you feel horrible. And now it's every week, and it's not just the ratings. I see the ratings every Monday, and then on Sunday I'll find out what the meters look like, and that'll give me an indication of what the ratings are going to look like 3 weeks down the line. And then sometimes they come a day late because there's a holiday, like we said Labor Day or Memorial Day, so you find out the ratings on Tuesday. So I feel like every day of the week I'm getting some sort of report or update as to what's happening, and it's we've been lucky in the sense that it's been moving in the right direction. And it's been pretty consistently moving in the right direction. But yeah, anyone who's in radio, regardless of the reason, regardless of if there's an excuse. I mean, a lot of times they'll say, around Christmas, no one's listening to anything except Christmas music. And so ratings take a hit. And I don't take that any less personally just because I'm not as big as Jesus or songs about reindeer. But yeah, that sucks. I mean, you don't want to, because I'd like to believe whatever it is we're doing is more interesting than someone hearing Jingle Balls for the 5,000th time. So we've been lucky. I mean, it was a slow, like our first year, there was really nowhere to go but up. So we were lucky in the sense that we didn't really have a lot of room to go down from what I got the station at. We've been very lucky over the past, it's been pretty consistent since last summer that we've been kind of climbing, and just so happened that the last few months have been really good, and people are now happy. But it sucks too because look, when you're a new show, people give you a lot of attention, like in the building, etc. When you start not doing well and the ratings aren't great, people start to distance themselves from you. The same way like dogs will distance themselves from the sick dog, because they're pack animals. And then when you start doing well, so in a way you get left alone, which is great because it means you can kind of really focus on doing what you want to do the show you want to create, come up with your content. If other people bother you, don't have a bunch of people calling you to meetings because no one wants to be associated with you because you're. But then as soon as things start going well, everyone wants to start being around you again. And I've noticed the last few months, it's been, one of the annoying things about doing well is all of a sudden you got meetings and clients want to meet with you and they want you to do this and you got to come to this meeting. People want to bring tours by to meet the show. And that can sometimes be, more of a annoyance than anything else, because then that takes away from some of the focus you have on trying to make your show good.
What's it been like? Last month, you got into a bit of a radio war, I would say sort of, with a radio producer from one of the shows at the same place, at CBS Radio. Have things been weird with that show, or did you guys patch it up? What's the vibe been like? There's
been no patching up. There's been no communication. I mean, it's really interesting to me. It's really interesting to me that the other shows in the building are very aware of what we're doing, and they use it. They use it to talk bad about. It's just fascinating that I don't know how it started, but for whatever reason, I just went on the air at the very beginning and said, if you like these other shows that we have on, you're probably not going to like our show because it's going to be different. And so if you're used to listening to these other shows, then keep listening to those other shows. I will play segments from other shows in the market to let people know what else they could be listening to. I'm basically saying everyone's really lazy these days. Like on Sunday, I'm sure you're like most other people. You probably don't even flip around and watch football anymore. You stick on the Red Zone channel. You let them decide what games you should, and that's like the best way to, your hands are free. You don't have to worry about it. I will do the same service for the other people. I'll say, I'll play them clips of all of the other shows that are on against us, which I know a lot of PDs would say, why would you ever promote the other shows? And I will say, here's what you could be, if you want to listen to this, if you want an American Idol recap for 45 minutes, here you go. This is a good show that'll do that. We won't do any of that. And I think the other shows didn't like the fact that even though I was saying nice things, I said, these guys are doing a great job covering everything that's going on with the Kardashians. So listen to if you want that, this is the show to do it. We will not be doing that, but listen to that. And I think they took it as a dig, and as a result, there's just a lot of animosity, I guess, negativity, whatever, towards us, towards what we're trying to do. And, there was a producer that was out running her mouth, and we just had a listener that happened to be at a bar and overheard it and sent us a transcript of the conversation. And I found it fascinating more than anything else. I was interested in how much hate there was towards us, to be honest. And we went on the air with it, and I was told that I was probably not the right thing to do. But we like to try to keep our audience abreast of what's going on.
Now, what's your take when they say that's not the right thing to do? Do you care what these people think, these outside voices, or do you have trust in yourself that it made for good radio? What's it like when you get told it's not a good idea?
Like sometimes, I guess the thing I should say, like any radio guy that wants to come across like a hard-ass shock jock would say, I don't care what the man says, but you have to, if you want to keep your job, like to a certain extent, you have no choice. You have bosses; they've got bosses. Like there's certain, you have to play by certain rules. I can't go on the air and say a bunch of words I don't want to say. I'm sure there's a ton of things I probably would get fired for doing. Early on we wanted to do when Kim Jong Un in North Korea was boycotting whatever they were leaking the dictator and all that. We wanted to have this Kim Jong Un lookalike contest. And they shut it down pretty quickly. We had all these people that were going to bring in animals and kids and all these different people that looked like Kim Jong-un, and they were going to win dictator for the day. And shut it down because they felt that it was going to lead to people saying that the station was, forget it, racist or racially insensitive or whatever. They didn't understand that we were poking fun at a dictator, and I think that people get that more than ethnicity or nationality. I had no choice. Like, I would have loved to have continued on with that. That was like outside of my, there's certain things that, people say, it's better to get forgiveness than permission to do stuff. I think that's usually pretty true. It sucks when I do something that I think is great on the air and I have to sit through a meeting. Like, my goal right now is to try to do the best show that I can do, but also try to avoid meetings. And what I've learned is to do the best show that I can do, I probably have to sit through 3 or 4 meetings a week. But that's that's unfortunately part of that's the grind, of putting on a decent show, is that, you don't want to. I don't think you want to play it so safe. And this is the state radio's in right now, is that so many people are playing it so safe to avoid all meetings and to just keep everyone happy. And as a result, there's nothing interesting for the audience to listen to. And that doesn't mean you have to constantly be tasing people in the balls. Like, I think there's other ways to not play it safe, just conversations, getting into topics that we talk about. And we take a lot of heat, and I've got to sit through a lot of meetings and learn about why what I did was not right, or why I offended this person, or, my co-host is a lesbian, and I called her a gay lesbo the other day, or a big gay lesbo or something, and that offended a lot of people, and they thought I was being homophobic. And letters come in about that, and when letters come in, people have to address those, and then I got to sit through a meeting, and will I stop saying that? Probably not. But
are you ever talking on air and then you go, oh crap, I'm going to get yelled at for this? Is there ever a point when you're saying something on air and that moment that's going to get you in trouble? Do you ever have that vibe?
Yeah, all the time. It's probably 6 times a show. I'm like, I hope, and there's definitely times where I'll think to myself, man, I really hope that person wasn't listening now, or the boss isn't listening at this time. And more often than not, we'll think about stuff, because when we got that letter sent in from a listener about the other producer that was talking, there was a moment where I did think about it. I think there was a moment where I was like, yeah, this could probably lead to some like bad blood in the building, and it's probably not going to necessarily be the best outcome. But I personally found it very interesting, and as a result, I was like, if I find it that interesting, I think that at least enough of the audience will, and especially because the show that had come after us is a show that's been on in the Bay Area for like 25 years, and it's one of those shows that, in some ways I have a lot of respect for anyone who's been able to keep a job in this industry for as long as that, because it's a messed up industry and it's really hard to do that. At the same time, I feel like it's the shows that have kind of remained very stagnant. They're not evolving. They're not trying new things. And I feel like in many ways that's the erosion. That's what's eroding radio, is that people are like, yeah, I get it. And I've always tried to say, like, I always try to be a little bit ahead of like, a little bit ahead of like the audience. I feel like once the audience catches up, that'll last for a little bit. But then once the audience is kind of past where you are and they know where you're going and they can predict what you're going to do and they know what soundbite you're going to hit before you hit it. And I think that they lose interest pretty quickly. And so I don't know. I feel bad for a lot of audiences that don't have shows in their cities, that they can actually listen to, that they actually look forward to listening to in the morning,
Now, if people want to hear your show and they're not in the Bay Area, where can they check out Kevin Klein live?
You mean because they were so stimulated by this interview, this in-depth radio interview, that they would want even more? Is that what you're saying? That's
what I'm saying, Kevin. Where can they check out your badass show?
I think there's a podcast with half the show gets podcast. I'm not exactly sure why. Half the show is available. It's called Half Off. I don't know which half of the show it is. It changes every day. It's on, I think it's on iTunes, Play.it, or you could find us on radio.com, which is an app that sometimes works and oftentimes does not.
Well, dude, keep up the good work. I'm very appreciative that you came on Happy Hour, and I love what you're doing out there in the Bay, because most people in radio don't ever want to take any risks. So I respect what you're doing with your show and your crew.
Good talking to you. If you ever need anything, man, I like what you're doing. I like your passion, and just keep doing what you're doing, but stop growing, okay?
I promise, dude, and I will try to make myself not as goofy looking as that Game of Thrones character you mentioned.
All right. Be good. Bye.
All right. Peace out.
Happy Hour. Happy Hour.